Oh, look at that. And that is my live demo completed. I didn't run this by Lawrence. Health and safety about throwing sweets around. Is that like a health and safety no?
No. You can go.
Okay, excellent. So, who wants to be my volunteer for today? It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. And I'm looking for like, what's your name? Johnny. Excellent. So is it Gianni? Johnny.
Johnny Bravo. Johnny 5.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. What do I have to throw?
You don't need to throw anything. Choose one of these. Which do you like more?
Oh God, I hate all English candy.
Well, fortunately, it's
better.
chocolate, not candy.
Oh. I'll stay with these.
You like them?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't know if I like them.
They're the ones we're going to give away. You can have these.
That backfired.
Enjoy them. You can give them away too.
I'm going to.
It's like a virtuous circle.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so what we're going to try and hopefully go through today is look at simple hacks to DevSecOps stardom. And when we think about that, we're hopefully thinking about, you know, oh my goodness, a picture of my face. I'm like a celebrity. And some rules about me. We're trying to make it that DevSecOps as a concept is not particularly foreign from either DevOps or what we're kind of already doing in software engineering or, you know, turning on a computer. It shouldn't be as separate as a concept that other people need to be able to, I don't know, hack the Linux kernel to be able to start to secure their systems. One of the big things that we have, I don't know if anyone else feels like this so I've been doing what has loosely been determined as DevOps for about the last 7 years, and I constantly have to redefine what I do. And normally that consists of borrowing the terms of whoever just told me what they think DevOps is and using those terms back to people. So I end up with constant paranoia about people say to me I'll go to a dinner, you know, I'm invited because my wife is invited and I'm her +1. I don't get many invites to dinner because mainly I try and talk to them about, you know, special interests that I have, which in general I can make most things seem relatively geeky. Will, do you play the guitar? Yes, I play the guitar. I've got 16 guitars. Let's talk about the history of guitar making. Okay, so when we think about DevOps, I'm kind of thinking about the idea that DevOps owns the process of moving things between environments. In general, that kind of as a process, I'm not sure that it exists as a long-term thing. ChatGPT may replace me, and I've got a secondary career lined up as a hairdresser, because I think hairdressers, I think they've got about 150 years, and maybe software engineering's only got 50. And what we're thinking about in DevSecOps, really we're just putting the word securely into everything. So anything you can think of, put the word securely or secure. As an idea, it works because that's generally what we're putting with DevSecOps. We've shoehorned the word sec in between dev and ops. Now, the number one thing I think about generally when we are looking at securing systems is that we need to think about asking questions of what kind of things we are looking to secure, who we're looking to secure them against, what kind of areas we need to understand. Now, there's interesting areas about asking questions because there's generally, you know, a limited amount of different styles of questions that we can ask. And actually, I've found that you can ask the same question and actually ask it in different ways. So we can ask like a closed question that's yes or no. Is your system secure? That sounds like, well, you say yes. What's your name, sorry?
Olu.
Olu, good luck. We can ask, we can ask kind of open questions. You know, is Olu's system secure? Well, we can start to say, you know, probing questions. We can ask leading questions. I can ask a loaded question that I think I just did. You know, we can ask all different kinds of questions, and that starts to deliver us towards an idea of what we're looking to secure in the right way and what methods we're going to use to look to secure it. Now, if there was one thing that I've asked people who have worked with me recently to do, it is to get better at communicating what you're trying to do. Now, people say to me often, Will, you're very good at speaking, and I say, no, I'm not. I practice quite a lot about talking to people because I can try and take most things and make them geeky. Now, if we're able to draw, we're able to visually communicate. I don't know how many people work with people who are like either don't necessarily understand what you're saying all the time, or work with people who are non-native English speakers, or work with people who you would love to be able to convince them to do something, but you don't seem to be able to convince them that they need to run security as part of, you know, an overall system. If we're able to more effectively communicate that, whether that's, you know, drawing, we can see a picture here. I tried to work out how long it would take me to describe this as like a simple pipeline to deliver something. You know, we're writing some code, we're, you know, doing a commit, we're doing a pull request. That's pretty much most of the developer experience. We're then, you know, putting it into a CI/CD pipeline system that's going to do a lint. I put lint as a special one. I kind of maybe mean static test, but lint, a build, a test, deploy. And then we're just going to do test, deploy, test, deploy, test, deploy, test, deploy, test, deploy over however many systems we've got. You know, that's a simple drawing for what we're looking to do. So if we're able to visually communicate, we're able to start getting those ideas across about what we're trying to achieve. Now, the next thing is, if we can visually communicate, we can start to write things down. Now, the great thing about writing things down is that I start to be able to communicate to you outside of, you know, my entire world. I can communicate over time and space to other people, like I am some kind of future superhero. And often when we're thinking about writing things down, we're thinking about, I'm going to write a README, or I'm going to write a changelog, or I'm going to write how I expect people to contribute. Now, this is sometimes overlooked in terms of people who are like, well, we're going to write security things. So what we need to do is wear a hacker, you know, hack the planet t-shirt and wear a hoodie, and then we're going to just like hacker type everything. I'm not very good at doing that. I like to think that I do care very much about how people contribute and how people are going to contribute securely to the projects that people work on. So the more we can get them to understand that we're actually driving this as a secure system, then the greater output we're going to have at the end. Because none of us, I say none of us, most of us are not working on our own. We are working in large teams with other people, and we all have to make that effort because we are only as strong as our weakest link in that chain. And also, I've found an amazing thing where, so I've worked for a bunch of different companies, and I found that, well, actually, my documentation appears to outlive me. So when my code is dead, my docs still seem to be around. So I'm not sure how much I should talk about it, but I found that the contributing guide to a large multinational company that I worked for 5 years ago is still their contributing guide. So I still live on in their memory, and someone goes, oh, I wish I could ask him, you know, why he has chosen to run with 3 environments for that system. They can't ask me. I mean, they maybe could, but I've told them about it in how I'm expecting them to contribute, how I'm expecting them to secure systems, how I'm expecting them to run reviews. The next thing along really starts to come about reusing and recycling things. Now, whilst you've got a project, you know, we can work in isolation on the things that we have. But if we're going to work consistently in isolation, then we're only going to be as good as the outputs that we can have in a certain amount of time. Whereas if I can reuse and recycle things, then I'm going to get a lot greater output, and that's actually going to be a virtuous circle, because the next time I'm not going to have to rewrite this. So if I've written, you know, how I'm expecting people to make a pipeline, and I've made a pipeline, and I've installed some tools for them to use, and I've given them some rules around what I'm expecting them to run, then the next time, I'm actually probably just going to pick that pipeline up and move it to the next project. Or I'm going to say, well, actually, I've already done this before, and it becomes a virtuous circle where we've got the ability to, to use open source or inner source or developer platforms or platform engineering, where we are using these templates to keep our DevSecOps systems running optimally. And we actually find that we've got a greater ability to scale this beyond one person. It's something that if you are going to go and look at a whole bunch of systems, you're going to find a whole bunch of reuse, and the ability to try out open source projects and whether they fit to the problems that you have is really going to be vital in running things forwards. Now, this shirt isn't too bad. I'm not very good at ironing, but what we think about I had a lesson once from someone who decided I wasn't good at ironing. It was like an 80-year-old relative who told me, "You're not very good at ironing." I said, "I know, I don't iron shirts." He was like, "You can't," I was staying at his house in California. He said, "You can't stay at my house if you're not ironing your shirts. I'm going to show you how to iron your shirts." And he had an ironing room. I'm still not very good at ironing, but I had a lesson. It's not something I'm improving on. That's probably a conscious choice. So if we think about knowing our tools, what we can think about is that we've got a series of kind of environments that we're going to work through. We've got a developer machine that's going to be local to what we're doing. We're going to do most of our creation of things on our local machine. We've got our version control that's going to be most of our auditing of our system. Now, if you're writing policy as code, if you're writing infrastructure as code, if you're writing software, then actually your version control becomes the auditing system that is going to understand when you made changes, probably why you made changes, and where that change is in your system now. I think I maybe did a talk a while back about that everyone should have version numbers for everything they do. If you don't have version numbers, then it's a really terrible way to be, and just give yourself a version number today. Make it number 1. Now, when we're thinking about driving security back through that, there's areas that we can look to secure in all of that, and that's not necessarily always tools. If we're looking at the code review that we're running, we don't necessarily have to have tools to do that. We can look at each other's code. You can ask for reviews. You can say, this is what we're expecting in our security review. And it's not a tool that's going to say whether we're going to be doing things in an appropriate way or not. It's just going to be a series of people talking together about how that would be more secure. But we're never going to achieve the amount of things that people would hope without a whole bunch of tools. So in terms of DevSecOps tools, what we're really looking at, we're looking at kind of secret scanning tools, and we're looking at static testing tools, and we're looking at, dependency management, container scanning, secret management, DAST and SAST, and SBOMs. SBOMs is the new buzzword. I don't know how many, I was at a conference yesterday and Tuesday. Lots and lots of SBOMs. Everyone's loving an SBOM. We can get some scorecards for our SBOMs. For people who don't know, SBOM is like software bill of materials, so we're able to look underneath the dependencies that we have inside our projects for software dependencies, and we're able to look underneath at the dependencies that those dependencies have, and the dependencies that those dependencies have, and so we're able to properly manage our next Log4Shell, which is still a super trendy subject. And most people are probably going to start by shoving most of these tools, whichever ones they think are going to be most appropriate for them, into some kind of CI platform, because that's where you're going to do most of your automation, and it's going to be able to provide details back to developers, back to code reviews. So we can look at going out and having a stage for some kind of security testing. Ideally, we want the ones that return fastest results first, the ones that take longest to come in last. Don't make me context switch. If I context switch, I will entirely forget what I was doing. And we can also start to looking to move things more back into developer streams as well. So where we're thinking about, well, actually, I could run secret scanning on people's local machines. I can run that as a pre-commit. I don't need to run that in my CI platform, but I probably will as well, and because it's a super quick job. But it's actually going to stop things before they're even there. So not only are we getting a secure, supply chain through it, we're actually getting secure development from a minimal implementation of tools. If people don't have standardized development environments for people and kind of succinct onboarding things, then that would be a really good way of starting, and pre-commits can do most of that for you. And it's also, I think that it's a great thing to be wrong some of the time. So as long as we can be wrong inside a controlled environment, then it's absolutely okay to be wrong. You get a very injected learning environment for you, and being able to give people both controlled learning environments and learning experiences is a great way of being able to upskill people. I remember working at a company once who didn't think they had any security problems, and that was a problem in itself because they had a security problem that they didn't know about, and it was just that they thought they didn't have one. Because when we imagine that we've got a wobbly jelly of systems that we're running, the custom code that we write is going to be a very small amount of veneer on the top of lots of other people's bits of code. So if we can establish that we're going to need to scan the dependencies we're running, we're going to need to develop some way of managing SBOM so that we can head off the next log4shell or whatever the tool of choice is going to be then, and that we're going to need to understand that we've got to secure our platforms, and so we can't run, I don't know, with Kubernetes running with access to root, and we need to know that our infrastructure as code has to have some kind of policies so that we can't provision stuff that could just be taken over, because it doesn't actually matter where people would attack you inside that stack. If they get in, they can probably move between the stacks, and it's a big cause for concern in terms of people managing that. So you're just looking at being able to secure all of them, and we're going to use the things that we've kind of talked about already. We've talked about developer stuff, we've talked about some tools, we've talked about reviews, to be able to deliver that. And it also actually takes that we spend a bit more time planning things out. So where we have the idea that if I had hindsight of all the things that I've ever done, I probably would have executed things slower, because the time that we spend planning is probably 10 times the time that we're going to save in execution. So getting to understand that we need to ask specific questions of the tools that we run, the systems that we run, the people that we develop with, is going to give you that ability to make the right choices going forwards. Because unfortunately, it doesn't take, we could have a million bugs in our code, but if one attacker gets in, that could be game over. And we've also got this thing that we're trying to imagine the future. So I like to try and imagine, actually, I don't know as my job is a real job in the future, because what we're trying to do is take an idea from someone's head, generally a business idea from someone's head, turn it into like a thought, and then throw it so other people can catch it. So all of my supply chain for security only exists as a way of delivering that idea from someone's head. And if I knew when I was going to get to a point that those things were going to be like that, can I work backwards from there and understand what I'm going to do in 5 years' time to do DevSecOps? The last thing I think about doing anything, you'll see that I've reused a slide with a picture of my face, and it says "be memorable." Now, there's a big thing about managing things when we're talking about security, that generally people, I think we're probably changing the attitude, but thinking that security just says no to things, or blocks things, or stops innovation, or and that people are doing it because of the best of intentions, and because actually that is their job. But being able to work with it and make sure that we are able to share with people that kindness, the selflessness, the humour, the connection is actually going to be able to mean that you are a better person to work with. And when you're a better person to work with, you're going to be more secure in general because people are going to work with you and not against you. And then I was going to look this up as a quote on ChatGPT or something like that, which is what I do with most of my quotes. I don't want to give away too many secrets. Most of the time when I have a quote, I write that quote down into Google and Google it and then try and find a person that has said that thing that I think would be a brilliant quote. And then I have to review whether I think, is this an okay person for me to use a quote from? Obviously, I wouldn't use a quote from Nigel Farage. So you're like, oh no, I can't use that quote. I don't like that person. I will find another one. I'll have to rewrite my quote.